Just over 50 years ago, in 1971, a small car company was founded in Kent, a company that went from making soft-top conversions of coupes to buying the tooling for a Group B car. That company was called Paul Banham Conversions, named after the founder. Mr. Banham had noticed that the newly released Aston Martin DBS did not offer a convertible option, unlike its predecessor, the DB6, and he had a brainwave. If Aston Martin was not going to offer a soft-top DBS, why not make his own? So that's exactly what he did, and Paul Banham Conversions soon became a respected name within the coach building community. Further conversions soon followed, with Banham offering soft tops for the Ferrari 400, the Jaguar XJS, and the Rolls-Royce Corniche. Speaking of the XJS, in the 1970s Banham started to offer another variant of Jaguar's coupe, the FHC. This stood for fixed head conversions, and it was a modification to cleanly remove the Jag's controversial flying buttresses. The finished design looked rather similar to the later Daimler XJS concept, a 1980s proposal that never came to fruition. A problem arose that in 1977, Aston Martin started offering soft-top DBSs, as did Jaguar in 1983 with the soft-top XJSC. While there was still a healthy customer base for the Ferrari 400 conversions, this represented a significant danger to Banham. There are only so many DBS and XJS coupe owners wanting to convert their cars, rather than just buying a soft-top version. Banham had to find a new way of making money, and fast. The solution was to release new models, the first of which was the Banham Sprint in the late 80s. If it looks familiar, it's because it's a replica of the iconic Austin Healey Frog Eye Sprite, except with a difference. While it shared the dependable A series engine, in the Sprint it was mounted sideways, resulting in the Banham being front-wheel drive. This is because, underneath, it was based on a classic Mini, an inspired choice since both it and the Sprite were known for their frantic low-power fun. Minis were also very cheap at the time, as were the kits to build the Sprint. That's right, the Sprint was Banham's first kit car, and it sold in huge numbers in comparison to the expensive soft-top conversions. This unexpected success led to Banham switching exclusively to kit cars in its later years, but we'll get to that later. The next Paul Banham Conversions model was one of their most iconic, the Jaguar XJS S. Yes, Banham had returned to the XJS several years after their soft-top conversion had been discontinued. However, this was no mere convertible job. Instead, it was a project to modernise and update the ageing XJS, which looked severely out of date by the time the 1990s came around. The looks were controversial, with it looking more like a contemporary TVR than a Jaguar as a result of its shared parts. The taillights were from the first-gen Ford Mondeo, and the headlights were from a Vauxhall Corsa B. Sometime in the late 90s, Banham started selling a kit that was a replica of the Porsche 550 of James Dean fame. It was based on a rear-engined, rear-wheel drive sporty coupe, the Skoda 130 Rapid. The kit was named the Banham 130 Spider, merging the names of the Skoda and Porsche. Compared to most replica kits of old race cars, the 130 Spider was actually quite faithful in terms of power. Although the humble Czech 1.3 only put out around 55 horsepower, the original 550 only produced 70, so Banham's effort was pretty close in terms of speed. Banham's next car was probably their most famous, the X99. Despite the name, this bore no relation to the Fiat X19. In fact, the name reflected the year it released, 1999. It was based on a Rover Metro, made evident by the high suspension and odd proportions. If it looks familiar, it's because the X99 was heavily inspired by the Audi TT, to the extent that soon after its release, Audi's lawyers got in contact with Banham and forced them to hastily change the design. This resulted in the similarly gawky-looking X21, released on New Year's Day 2000, touted by Banham as the first new car of the millennium. Perhaps an indication of how car design would worsen over the next 2 decades. Another variation of the X99 body was the Superbug, a buggy-style car with no roof or doors, and Testarossa-style side strakes for some reason. It was not a success, and looking at it, it's easy to see why. A while after Group B ended in spectacular fashion, Ford was looking to sell the tooling and moulds for their RS200, and Paul Banham was the man who bought them. He immediately set about looking for a car with the same wheelbase as the rally car, and found one in the humble Austin Maestro. Well known these days for being rare and a bit rubbish, back then Banham was thinking of the quick Maestro Turbo model, to add a welcome turn of speed to the RS200 replica he was planning. Now of course you're probably wondering how Banham set about converting the Maestro drivetrain to be mid-engined and four-wheel drive, since the original Ford had used that layout. The answer is, he didn't. The Banham 200 was a front-engined, front-wheel drive RS200. The space in the back where the engine would have sat was used for a 2+2 configuration with a big boot. It's safe to say then that the Banham 200 was not an accurate replica, making the purchase of Ford toolings a wasted one. The 200 was Banham's penultimate car, not counting the Mini Roadster since it was a conversion. A passion project of Paul Banham's, it was Banham's only offering in the 2000s not to be offered in kit form, being coach-built only. Banham's final car was another X99-based offering, and is perhaps the most infamous car Paul Banham Conversions ever offered, the 2002 Bat. Looking at its Bugatti-esque grille and incohesive design, it is perhaps not surprising that Banham folded in 2004, just 2 years later. This was due both to the kit car market becoming oversaturated and new government regulations regarding kit approval. This was not the end of Paul Banham, however, since he now runs a wooden steering wheel company by the name of Myrtle Limited. No Banham designs are still in production, since the companies that bought the rights to the 200 and Speedster are both bankrupt. No other Banham designs were ever purchased by another company.